My name is Lydia Crane, and I'm 33 years old. The first sound I remember was the slow, steady beep of a heart monitor and the faint hum of fluorescent lights above me. I couldn't move at first. My arms felt heavy, like someone had tied invisible weights to them. My throat burned when I tried to speak, and all that came out was a dry whisper. A nurse leaned over me, smiling with practiced warmth. "You're awake," she said, adjusting something near my IV. Her badge said, Nurse Riley, and I clung to that name as though it might anchor me to something real. "Where am I?" I croaked. "You're in Street Clare Memorial Hospital, sweetheart. You've been here for 2 days. Just rest, okay? 2 days?" I blinked, confused. I had no memory of arriving, no flashes of pain or sirens or anything that explained how I'd ended up in a hospital bed. My mind was a blank sheet. When I tried to recall the last thing I'd done before waking up here, my temples throbbed. I asked what had happened to me, but Nurse Riley just smiled tighter. "You had a little accident. You're going to be fine." That word accident stuck in my mind like a thorn. I looked down at my body. My right arm was bruised, and there were faint cuts across my collarbone. My ribs ached when I breathed too deeply. It looked like I'd been in a car wreck, but no one would confirm it. When the nurse left, I stared at the ceiling for what felt like hours. I didn't know if it was morning or night. The room had no windows, just the sterile hum of machines and the distant echo of footsteps in the hall. A different nurse entered later, younger, jumpier. She avoided my eyes and checked the machines as if on autopilot. I asked her for my phone, or at least a contact number for a family member. She hesitated. "I'm sorry, Miss Crane, but we don't have your personal belongings. They must have been lost at the scene." "The scene of what?" I asked sharply. She froze, lips parting slightly, then recovered. "I'm sure the attending physician will go over everything once he's back." "When will that be?" I'm not sure." She left before I could press further. That was the moment unease began curling in my stomach. Hospitals were supposed to make you feel safe. Instead, everything about this place felt wrong. The flickering lights, the way the staff whispered near the doorway, the way they kept glancing at the clock like they were counting down to something. Hours later, I must have dozed off because I woke to muffled voices outside my room. My name, Crane, floated through the door, spoken urgently by someone who didn't sound like hospital staff. "She shouldn't still be here," one voice hissed. "He said to clear the room before noon." "She's not stable enough yet," another replied. "We can't just push her out without orders are orders." I tried to sit up, but a sharp pain shot through my side. My vision blurred, but I caught a glimpse of 2 figures passing the glass window in the door, one in scrubs, one in a suit. The man in the suit saw me looking and quickly turned away. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. By the time the nurse returned, her demeanor had changed completely. She handed me a clipboard with discharge papers. "You're cleared to go," she said lightly. I blinked at her in disbelief. "Go where?" "I don't even remember my address." "Someone will meet you outside," she said, voice flat. "Who?" She avoided eye contact. "It's all arranged, Miss Crane. You're lucky to be alive." I wanted to protest, but my body was weak. My hands trembled as I reached for the pen. The forms were full of jargon. I couldn't understand something about liability release, ongoing treatment responsibility, and non-transferable care. Before I could sign, the nurse leaned closer and whispered, "You should leave quietly, don't ask questions." That single sentence terrified me more than anything else. I stared at her, trying to read her face. Her eyes darted toward the hallway, and I noticed the faint tremor in her hands. "Why?" I whispered back. She opened her mouth to answer, but just then, another nurse entered, and her expression hardened into a professional mask. "Everything ready?" the newcomer asked. "Yes," the first nurse said quickly, tucking the clipboard against her chest. They exchanged a look I couldn't decode. Minutes later, an orderly arrived with a wheelchair, insisting on taking me downstairs for final paperwork. I didn't argue. I felt too dizzy, too weak. As we rolled down the corridor, I noticed that the nameplate on my door had already been removed. My bed had been stripped bare, as if I'd already left. When we reached the lobby, I tried to ask for the attending doctor, but the orderly just smiled awkwardly and said, "He's not available right now." The air in the hospital lobby felt cold, sterile, and wrong. I could sense the staff watching me, some with pity, some with fear. It was like they were waiting for me to vanish. As the orderly turned me toward the automatic doors, I caught sight of a clock on the wall, 11:57 a.m. I remembered the voices outside my room. Clear the room before noon. Panic surged in my chest. "Stop," I said, gripping the wheelchair arms. "I'm not leaving until I speak to the doctor." The orderly hesitated, then looked toward the nurse's station. A woman in a navy blue uniform nodded curtly. "It's fine. Let her go." I was just about to stand when I heard a voice echo from across the hall. A deep, commanding voice that cut through the noise like glass. "Miss Crane, stop! Don't discharge her." The orderly froze. Everyone turned. A man in a white coat was striding toward us, his ID badge swinging against his chest. He looked furious, his eyes locked on me like I was someone he'd been searching for. "Who authorized this discharge?" he demanded. The staff around me fell silent. He turned to me, his expression softening slightly. "Miss Crane, my name is Dr. Rowen Hale. I need you to come with me right now." I blinked, still gripping the chair. "What's going on?" He glanced at the paperwork the nurse held. Then at me. "You were about to be sent home under false pretenses." "False pretenses?" "Yes," he said quietly, eyes narrowing. "Because, Miss Crane, you're listed here as the sole beneficiary of a man who died 2 nights ago." And in that moment, every sound in the lobby stopped, even my own heartbeat. He looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. The moment Dr. Rowen Hale said my name, a chill ran down my spine. I hadn't told anyone who I was since waking up. The nurses only knew my last name from the hospital wristband. But he'd said Lydia, like he'd known it all along. He was tall, mid-40s maybe, with the kind of posture that came from years of authority. His voice was calm, almost too calm, but his eyes, they looked haunted, like he knew something about me that he didn't want to say out loud. He motioned for the staff to step back, then crouched beside my wheelchair. "You're safe now," he said quietly. "I'm sorry for the confusion. There's been a mistake." A mistake? That was one word for it. I glanced around and noticed how the nurses had suddenly gone rigid, their faces pale and nervous. No one would meet his eyes. Whatever power he held here, they respected it and feared it. He stood and nodded toward a nearby hallway. "Come with me, Miss Crane. We need to talk privately." I hesitated. Every instinct screamed that I shouldn't trust him. But the way the others looked at him like they'd been waiting for him to arrive made me curious. So I let him guide me down the hall. His office was at the far end, away from the main floor. The door had a small Fader's plaque that read, "Dr. Rowen Hale, Chief Medical Consultant." Inside, the air was cooler, the lights dimmer. Everything was meticulously organized: books, files, certificates. A faint scent of disinfectant lingered in the air. He gestured for me to sit. "I imagine you're confused," he said, sitting behind his desk. "That's an understatement," I replied, my voice still shaky. "No one will tell me what happened. I don't even remember how I got here." He steepled his fingers and studied me for a long moment. "You were found unconscious 2 nights ago. Near Route 9? Just outside the city. Paramedics brought you here." I frowned. "A car accident?" "Yes. A serious one." That explained the bruises, the cuts, the pain in my ribs. He leaned back slowly. "There was another person involved. A man named Benedict Rowen." The name didn't ring any bells. I shook my head. "I don't know him." "Doctor." Hale's expression darkened. "He didn't survive." The words hit me like a wave. "Was he driving?" "Yes." He paused, watching my reaction carefully. "You were in the passenger seat." I searched my memory, desperate for a flicker of recognition. Nothing came. Just a pounding in my head. I'm sorry, I said softly. I don't remember him. That's not surprising, he said. You suffered a mild concussion and some temporary amnesia. It's possible certain details will return over time. Something in his tone made me pause. He said it too precisely, too rehearsed, like he'd practiced the line before coming in. I looked at him carefully. You said there was a mistake. What kind of mistake? He hesitated, then opened a folder on his desk. Inside were printed papers, neatly clipped together. He slid them toward me. These were sent to the hospital's legal department yesterday morning. I glanced down. At the top, in bold letters, it read, Last Will and Testament of Benedict Rowen. To the next line, Primary Beneficiary, Lydia Crane. I blinked, stunned. What? That's impossible. I don't even know this man. Dr. Hale nodded slightly, as if expecting that reaction. I thought the same thing, but the paperwork is legitimate, notarized, filed weeks before the accident. That doesn't make any sense. There's more, he said, opening another folder. This one contained a series of photos, scans of documents, a driver's license, a birth certificate. My information. My signature. Except I didn't remember signing any of it. This is your handwriting, isn't it? He asked. I stared at the signature. Lydia Crane, my own looping L, the slight slant of the D. It looked identical. It looks like mine, I admitted. But I never met this man. I never signed this. Dr. Hale sighed and leaned back in his chair. I've seen cases like this before. Sometimes people forget details after trauma. Relationships. Events. I'm telling you. I never knew him. He tilted his head slightly. Then why did he leave you everything? The room went silent. I could hear the faint ticking of a clock somewhere behind him. I rubbed my temples, frustration mounting. This doesn't make any sense. Why would the hospital care about who gets his money? He looked up sharply. Because the executor of his estate contacted the hospital before you even woke up. Someone wanted you discharged quickly, before you could be told. That explained the rush. The hushed voices. The forced paperwork. Who? I asked. I don't know yet, he said quietly. But whoever it was, they were very insistent. I swallowed hard. And you stopped them? He nodded once. I did. Because something about this isn't right. I studied him for a moment. You knew my name before I said it. He froze slightly, then gave a small, uneasy smile. Your records were in the system. No, they weren't, I said. The nurses didn't even know my first name. He looked down at his desk, tapping a pen lightly. You're perceptive. Why did you call me Lydia? I pressed. He sighed. Because I've seen your name before, months ago. Benedict Rowen mentioned you in one of his patient files. I felt a strange lurch in my stomach. Patient? He was your patient? Yes, he said carefully. A long-term case. He had severe anxiety and paranoia in his final months. He believed someone was trying to kill him. The word kill echoed in my ears. Did he say who? Dr. Hale shook his head. No. But he said he trusted only one person. He called her by name, Lydia. I assumed it was you. My pulse quickened. That doesn't mean I knew him. No, he said. But it does mean he thought he knew you. He opened a drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope. My name was written across the front in elegant handwriting. This arrived the morning after the crash. It was addressed to you. My hands trembled as I took it. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a few handwritten words. If you're reading this, Lydia, it means they found us. Tell no one. B. I stared at the note, heart pounding. What does this mean? Dr. Hale's gaze met mine, steady but unreadable. I was hoping you could tell me. I don't remember any of this, I whispered. Then we need to find out why. He stood and walked toward the blinds, staring out at the parking lot below. Benedict Rowen's death isn't as simple as it looks. And I think you were with him for a reason. I folded the note in my hands, my pulse racing. What kind of reason? He turned slowly, his eyes dark. The kind that gets people killed. And in that moment, I realized the man sitting across from me might be the only person who knew the truth or the one who'd been lying from the very start. The name on the will meant nothing to me until I saw the date beside it. The letters on the document blurred as I stared at them, my heart hammering in my chest. Benedict Rowen. It didn't sound familiar, not the first name, not the last. But the date next to it did. It was from 2 nights ago, the same night I'd woken up bruised, broken, and confused in this very hospital. Dr. Hale's office suddenly felt smaller. The hum of the fluorescent lights above us was deafening. I could hear the ticking of the wall clock, every second dragging out like a warning. Why would a man I've never met leave me his entire estate? I asked quietly. Dr. Hale didn't answer right away. He kept studying me like he was reading a medical scan. That's what I've been trying to understand, he said finally. You were found a few miles from the crash site, alone, unconscious. No ID, no phone, no wallet, nothing to identify you. Then, out of nowhere, we receive a file naming you as the sole beneficiary of Benedict Rowen's estate. He paused. Someone delivered it by hand. I looked up sharply. By hand? Who? He shook his head. Security didn't record the visitor. Whoever it was bypassed the front desk. They must have known their way around the hospital. A cold shiver crawled up my spine. So someone wanted to make sure you got that document? Yes. And they wanted to make sure I knew who you were before you even woke up. The weight of his words settled like a stone in my chest. I pushed the paper back toward him. Maybe this is all a mistake. Maybe they mixed me up with someone else. I considered that, he said. But the identification details matched perfectly. Your birth date, your address, even your driver's license number. I frowned. My driver's license was lost in the accident. Exactly, he replied softly. So how did they have that number before we even recovered your personal effects? The room went quiet again. I could feel a dull ache behind my eyes, part fear, part exhaustion. Dr. Hale leaned forward. There's something else you should know. Benedict wasn't just some businessman. He was complicated. Complicated how? He was a private investor, but he had connections with several corporate entities, some legitimate, others questionable. A few months before his death, he reported to the police that he was being followed. No one took it seriously. And you think that's connected to me? He didn't answer directly. I think his paranoia wasn't unfounded. I looked down at the will again, at the elegant pen strokes of Benedict's signature. There was something haunting about the way it curved, deliberate, confident, final. What exactly did he leave me? I asked. Doctor. Hale opened another file and began to list items. Property holdings, trust accounts, stock portfolios. The number at the bottom made my head spin. That's millions. He nodded. Yes, but there's more. There was also a sealed deposit box in his name addressed to you. My mouth went dry. Do you have it? No. It's being held by the executor until the estate is formally processed. So I can't see it? Not yet, he said, his expression unreadable. And frankly, I'm not sure it's safe for you to. That word safe made me tense. What aren't you telling me, doctor? I asked. He exhaled slowly, looking down at his hands. There's something off about this entire situation. I've seen inheritance fraud before, but not like this. Whoever orchestrated it has access to personal data, legal documentation, and likely, to you. Meaning? Meaning someone wanted you to be the beneficiary. But why? I've never met Benedict Rowen. He looked up, meeting my eyes with quiet intensity. Are you absolutely sure about that? The question hung in the air. I wanted to scream that, yes. Of course I was sure that I would remember a man whose death had somehow changed my life overnight. But as I tried to speak, something strange happened. A flash brief, like a flicker of light, passed through my mind. A table. Wine glasses. A man's laugh. The sound of rain on a window. Then nothing. I grabbed the edge of the desk, feeling dizzy. "Are you all right?" Dr. Hale asked, standing quickly. I nodded, rubbing my temples. "I don't know. I saw something." "What did you see?" "I don't know. It was gone too fast." "That could be your memory starting to return. Or a hallucination," I muttered, taking a sip. He gave a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'd prefer to believe the former." I sat back, trying to breathe evenly. The more I thought about that brief image, the clearer it became. A candlelit table, a man across from me. His face blurred but familiar. His voice deep, confident. Could that have been Benedict? "Doctor," I said after a moment. "Was anyone else in the car?" He froze slightly before answering. "No. Just you and Benedict." "What about the vehicle? Whose was it?" "Registered to him." "And what did the police say caused the accident?" "They believe it was a loss of control due to rain and speed." "Do you believe that?" He hesitated. "No." That single word was enough to make my heart race. "Then what do you think happened?" "I think someone wanted Benedict Rowen dead," he said quietly. "And I think you were never supposed to survive." My blood turned to ice. "You think the crash wasn't an accident?" "I think it was staged," he said. "But I can't prove it yet. Not until we know who's pulling the strings." I stared at him, struggling to process everything. "Then why am I still alive?" He looked at me for a long moment before replying. "Maybe they didn't expect you to wake up." Silence filled the room again. I tried to stand, but my legs felt weak. My mind was spinning with fragments: the will, the name, the strange flash of memory. "Doctor." Hale placed a reassuring hand on my arm. "You need rest. I'll handle the rest for now. But whatever you do, don't speak to anyone outside this office about the inheritance." "Why not?" "Because," he said, lowering his voice, "someone out there thinks you already know too much." The door opened slightly, and a nurse peeked in. "There's a call for you, urgent." He nodded. "Tell them I'll return it shortly." The nurse left, closing the door quietly behind her. Dr. Hale turned back to me. "Stay in your room for now. I'll have a guard posted near your door." I nodded numbly, unsure of what else to do. As he walked me back to my room, I noticed something strange. Every staff member we passed avoided looking at me. Their eyes flicked toward Dr. Hale, then down at the floor. When I reached my room, I sat on the edge of the bed, still clutching the paper with Benedict's name on it. I didn't know him. I was certain of that. But somehow, his death was tangled up in my life like a knot I couldn't undo. The lights dimmed, and the hallway outside grew quiet. I laid back against the pillow, trying to close my eyes. But before I could drift off, I heard a faint voice, soft, urgent, coming from the intercom above my bed. It wasn't a nurse. It wasn't Dr. Hale. It was a man's voice, distorted but clear enough to understand. "Lydia, don't trust him." And just like that, I knew the real danger wasn't outside my room. It was standing right beside me. It came back in flashes, headlights, rain, and someone shouting my name. Sleep didn't come that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw fragments, not dreams, not memories, but sharp, disjointed images that left me gasping awake. A flash of lightning across a windshield. A man's voice yelling, "Lydia, hold on!" The sound of metal grinding against metal. Then, darkness. I sat up, heart racing, sweat damp on my skin. My hospital room was dark except for the faint blue light from the monitor by my bed. The intercom above me was silent now, but the echo of that voice from earlier, "Don't trust him," lingered in my mind like an echo I couldn't shake. I pressed my palms to my temples and whispered, "What happened to me?" A soft knock startled me. Dr. Hale stood in the doorway, his expression calm but his eyes shadowed. "I saw your lights were still on," he said. "You should be resting." "I can't," I said, my voice shaking. "I keep remembering things but only in pieces." He stepped inside and closed the door. Tell me what you remember. I hesitated, then described the flashes, the rain, the shouting, the crash. His expression didn't change, but his eyes darkened with concern. That's progress, he said quietly. Your memory is starting to resurface. It doesn't feel like progress, I whispered. It feels like someone's forcing me to remember something I'm not supposed to. He took a step closer. Sometimes the mind represses trauma to protect itself. You may not like what comes back, but it's necessary to understand the truth. The truth about what? I asked. He hesitated, then sighed. About why you were with Benedict that night. The way he said it made me flinch. I told you I don't even know him. He looked at me gently, almost pitying. You keep saying that, Lydia, but what if your memory's wrong? What if you knew him better than anyone? I shook my head, backing away slightly. No, that doesn't make sense. Why would I lie to myself about that? Because remembering might hurt you more than forgetting. His words lingered in the air, heavy and deliberate. I didn't know if he meant to comfort me or warn me. I want answers, I said. He nodded. Then we'll find them. Together. He left soon after, leaving me with a promise to keep digging. But the look in his eyes, that careful, guarded look, told me there were still things he wasn't saying. I couldn't sleep again after that. Instead, I sat by the window, watching raindrops blur against the glass. The storm outside seemed to mirror the one inside my head, chaotic, unrelenting. Sometime around dawn, I noticed something strange on the nightstand. A folded slip of paper that hadn't been there before. I reached for it, my pulse quickening. It was hospital stationery, torn from a chart pad. In messy, hurried handwriting, it said, Room 403, 9 a.m., ask about the black car. There was no signature. I glanced at the door locked. The note hadn't been there when I last looked. Someone had come into my room while I was awake, or maybe while I was trapped in those half-dream memories. I hid the note under my pillow and waited. At 9 a.m., I pretended to go for a walk down the hall, clutching my IV pole for balance. My heart pounded as I passed the nurse's station and turned toward room 403. The door was ajar. Inside, a woman lay in bed, pale, bruised, bandaged. She looked like she'd been through the same kind of nightmare I had. When she saw me, her eyes widened. You're her, she whispered. The one from the crash. I froze. What did you say? She glanced toward the hallway nervously. You were there. They brought you in after me. I don't understand. I was in the ambulance behind yours, she said weakly. I saw the wreck, 2 cars. A black sedan and a silver SUV. They said the SUV swerved into your lane. My pulse spiked. Who said that? The paramedics. But when the police came, they told a different story. They said it was just one vehicle, the sedan. They erased the second car. I swallowed hard. Erased it? She nodded. They didn't want it on record. Someone made it disappear. Before I could ask more, footsteps echoed down the hall. A nurse appeared in the doorway, eyes narrowing when she saw me. Miss Crane, you're not supposed to be here. I mumbled something about getting lost and hurried back to my room. The words black car replaying in my head like a warning siren. If there had been another vehicle, then someone had lied about the accident report and maybe about Benedict's death too. By the time Dr. Hale returned later that morning, I was trembling with questions. There was another car, I said the moment he walked in. Someone told me. He froze mid-step. Who told you that? It doesn't matter. Is it true? He ran a hand over his face. That information wasn't supposed to be disclosed yet. So it is true? Yes, he said finally. There was another vehicle at the scene, a black sedan. But it was gone by the time investigators arrived. Gone? Vanished. No license plate. No witnesses who saw where it went. I stared at him in disbelief. And you didn't think to tell me? He sighed. I didn't want to overwhelm you. Overwhelm me? I felt my anger boil beneath the surface. You've been keeping things from me since I woke up. How am I supposed to trust you if you won't tell me the truth?" His expression softened, and for the first time, he looked genuinely conflicted. "Because, Lydia, some truths could get you killed." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Whoever was in that second car didn't just drive away, they made sure no one could find it. That takes power, influence, and a reason to cover their tracks. And you think that's connected to Benedict?" "I know it is," he said. "And I think he found out something he shouldn't have, something that cost him his life." I looked down at my hands, shaking. "Then what about me? Why am I still alive?" "Maybe, because you didn't remember," he said. "Until now." The way he said it sent a chill through me. That night, I sat on my bed, staring at the folded note again, the one that had led me to room 403. Who had left it? The woman had recognized me, but she hadn't written the note herself. Someone else wanted me to know the truth. I replayed the fragments again in my mind. The rain, the headlights, the voice shouting my name. But this time, something new appeared, a reflection in the windshield. Not just Benedict's face, but another. Someone sitting in the back seat. I gasped, gripping the sheets. My breathing quickened. There had been 3 of us in that car. I could hear it now, a low male voice from the back saying, "Just drive, Benedict. She doesn't need to know." And then, a second later, the crash. My heart slammed against my ribs as realization hit me. Dr. Hale had said it was only the 2 of us in the car, but he was wrong, or lying. Because in that single flash of memory, I knew exactly whose voice I'd heard. It was Dr. Hale's. And that meant the man who'd saved me had also been there the night Benedict died. She slipped me a note when no one was watching. By the next morning, I was a wreck. Sleep had abandoned me again, and my mind felt like a cracked mirror, every shard reflecting something I didn't want to see. Dr. Hale's voice echoed in my memory from the night before. Some truths could get you killed. But now I knew the truth he wasn't saying out loud. He'd been in that car. And if that was true, then everything he'd told me so far was a carefully constructed lie. I couldn't confront him yet, not until I had proof. Breakfast came and went untouched. I kept my head down, pretending to read the newspaper the nurse had left on my tray. My eyes weren't on the headlines. They were on the reflection in the stainless steel pitcher beside me. Every time a shadow moved past my doorway, my pulse spiked. Around mid-morning, the nurse from my first day, the one with the gentle eyes and trembling hands, came back on shift. Nurse Clara Wentz. I recognized her instantly. She gave me a small smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How are we feeling today, Miss Crane?" I forced a smile. "Better, I think. Just tired." She checked the monitor, scribbled something on her clipboard, then leaned slightly closer. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "You shouldn't be here." I froze. "What?" She pretended to adjust the IV line, keeping her back to the open door. "Someone's been watching your chart. Every time an update is added, it's deleted within the hour. They're trying to erase your record from the system." My mouth went dry. "Who's they?" She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder. "I don't know exactly, but Dr. Hale isn't the only one with access to your file. There's someone higher up involved, someone outside the hospital." I felt the blood drain from my face. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I made the mistake of asking questions," she said softly. "And now I'm being transferred to another facility suddenly, without explanation." Her hand trembled as she slipped something into my palm, a folded piece of paper. "Read it when you're alone, and whatever you do, don't tell anyone I spoke to you." Before I could respond, she straightened and smiled for the cameras. "You'll be just fine, Miss Crane," she said in a cheerful voice that fooled no one. Then she left the room. My fingers shook as I unfolded the note under the blanket. 3 words were scrawled in hurried ink. "Storage room B, midnight." That entire day dragged like a weight tied to my chest. I pretended to rest, pretending to be the compliant patient everyone wanted me to be. But inside, every muscle in my body buzzed with adrenaline. I waited until the hallways dimmed and the night shift took over. Around midnight, I slipped out of bed, wrapped my blanket around my shoulders, and shuffled toward the back corridor where the storage rooms were. Every creak of the floor made me flinch. I expected alarms, footsteps, voices, but the hospital was silent, unnaturally so. When I reached storage room B, the door was already cracked open. Inside, the fluorescent light flickered weakly. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with boxes of old patient files. And there, standing near the back, was Clara. Her eyes darted toward the door as I entered. "You came," she whispered. "I had to," I said. "What's going on, Clara? What are they hiding?" She pulled a file from the shelf and handed it to me. My name was printed on the label Crane Lydia. But when I opened it, my stomach twisted. The pages weren't medical records. They were legal documents, authorization forms, consent signatures, and insurance claims filed under my name. Only, none of them were mine. "These are fake," I said, flipping through the papers. "Who created these?" "Dr. Hale's department," she whispered. But that's not all. She opened another folder, marked Rowen Benedict. It contained scans of charts, prescription slips, and a list of medications all signed by Hale. But one page caught my eye. Neural Memory Stabilization Trial, Confidential. I looked at her sharply. "What is this?" "An experimental treatment program," she said. "Supposedly for trauma patients. But it was never approved by the ethics board. Hale's been conducting it in secret under funding from a private corporation. Marland Industries," I said automatically, the name from Benedict's letter echoing in my mind. Clara's eyes widened. "You've heard of them?" "Benedict mentioned them before he died," she swallowed. "Then you understand. The crash wasn't random, Lydia. It was cleanup. Hale was supposed to keep you under observation until the files could be erased, until no one could prove what they'd done to you." I staggered back, my breath catching. "You're saying he experimented on me?" Clara nodded grimly. "You were one of the test subjects, Lydia. So was Benedict. Only he found out what was really happening." The room began to spin. My memories of confusion, the missing days, the flashes of unknown places. They weren't just trauma. They were tampering. I grabbed the shelf to steady myself. "I need proof," I whispered. "Something solid." Clara reached into her pocket and handed me a small USB drive. "This contains copies of both your files. I've been sneaking them out for weeks. It's enough to expose him if you survive long enough to use it." I stared at the drive in my hand, heart pounding. "Why are you helping me?" She gave a sad smile. "Because my sister was one of his patients, too. She didn't survive the treatment. I can't let him do this again." Before I could respond, a loud metallic clank echoed from the hallway. Clara froze. Someone was coming. She pushed me toward the back wall. "There's a maintenance exit behind those boxes. Go, now." "What about you?" "I'll stall them," she whispered urgently. "You have to go, Lydia." I hesitated for a split second, long enough to see the door swing open. Dr. Hale stepped inside. His eyes swept the room, cold and precise. "Clara," he said evenly. "What are you doing here?" She smiled faintly. "Just updating inventory, doctor." His gaze shifted to me. "Miss Crane," he said softly. "You shouldn't be out of bed." My pulse raced. I tucked the USB drive into my sleeve. "I was just..." He cut me off with a slow smile. "You were just leaving, weren't you?" Something in his tone froze me in place. There was no warmth left in his voice, no trace of the man who had promised to help me. Clara stepped between us. "Doctor, please." He raised his hand sharply. "Enough." The air grew tense. He took a step closer, his voice calm but dangerous. "You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into, Lydia. Some things are better left buried." I clenched my fists. "Like what you did to Benedict?" For the first time, he hesitated just a flicker, then his mask returned. "You don't understand. He wanted this. You both did." Clara's voice trembled. "That's not true, and you know it." He sighed, almost sadly. "You shouldn't have come back here, Clara." Before I could react, the overhead light flickered, and then everything went dark. I heard a crash, a struggle, and Clara's muffled scream. Clara! I shouted, stumbling forward in the dark. When the lights flicked back on seconds later, the room was empty except for me. The door hung open, swinging slowly. Clara was gone. On the floor where she'd been standing was a small ID badge, cracked in half, her picture still visible under the plastic. And on the wall behind me, written in something dark and wet, were 3 chilling words: "He knows everything." That was the moment I realized Dr. Hale wasn't just lying to me, he was hunting me. It was written on a crumpled piece of paper tucked in my jacket, my handwriting, but not my memory. The night Clara vanished, I barely slept. I stayed locked in my hospital room with the lights off, clutching the small USB drive she'd given me. The silence in the corridors felt heavier than usual, like the whole building was holding its breath. I kept replaying what happened in storage room B. One moment, Clara had been beside me, brave, trembling, but determined. And the next, she was gone. No alarms, no witnesses, no explanation. It was as if she'd been swallowed by the walls. When morning came, I expected chaos. An announcement, a search, something. But instead, everything went on like nothing had happened. The nurses moved through their rounds, patients were wheeled past my door. No one mentioned her name. That was when I realized the hospital wasn't a place of healing anymore. It was a machine, and I was trapped inside it. By noon, a new nurse came in to check my vitals. She avoided eye contact and didn't wear a name badge. Her movements were stiff, rehearsed. I could tell she was there to watch me, not help me. "I'm fine," I said curtly. "You can go." She hesitated for a second before leaving, her eyes flicking toward the nightstand. The moment the door closed, I reached under the mattress and retrieved the folded blanket where I'd hidden the USB. It was still there. For now, I needed a plan, a way to get out of this place alive. That's when I remembered the jacket I'd been wearing the night of the crash. It was folded neatly in a plastic evidence bag inside the small closet by the window. I'd barely looked at it since waking up. I tore open the bag and slipped my hand into the pocket. My fingers brushed against something crumpled paper. I pulled it out carefully. It was damp and smeared with dirt, but the writing was unmistakable. My own handwriting. "Do not trust them. Call this number when you wake up." Below the message was a phone number, 10 digits, written in rushed, uneven scrawl. I read it over and over again, my heart pounding. The way it was worded, "when you wake up," made it sound like I had known this would happen. Like I had written this before the accident, expecting to lose my memory. But why would I have done that? I picked up the hospital landline and dialed the number. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped the receiver. It rang once. Twice. Then a click. Static filled the line, followed by a low, trembling voice. "Lydia?" I froze. "Who is this?" A pause. Then the same voice, barely above a whisper. "You're not supposed to be calling from there. Are you alone?" "Who are you?" I demanded. "You need to get out," the voice said urgently. "They'll be monitoring your calls. Don't say his name. Just listen to me." "Who are you?" I repeated, louder this time. The voice hesitated. "Someone who tried to help you before the crash. Someone who knows what Hale did." My grip on the phone tightened. "You were in the car?" "No. But I know who was." "Then tell me." I begged. "Tell me who killed Benedict." Before the voice could answer, the line went dead. I slammed the receiver down, shaking. The dial tone buzzed mockingly in my ears. A few seconds later, the phone rang again, same line, same number flashing on the screen. I hesitated, then picked up. "Lydia," the voice whispered, panicked now. "They know you called. Get rid of the note. Destroy it. He's coming." The line cut out again, this time replaced by a deafening tone that made me drop the phone. My heart thundered in my chest. "He's coming." Before I could move, the door opened. Dr. Hale stood there. His expression was calm, almost kind. Too kind. "You're up early," he said. I tried to steady my voice. "Just couldn't sleep." He nodded slowly, his eyes scanning the room. "I imagine last night was difficult." I didn't answer. He took a step forward. The nurses said you seemed unsettled. I'm fine. He smiled faintly. Good. Because I need to ask you something important. He picked up the plastic bag that had held my jacket, examining it like evidence. Do you remember wearing this the night of the accident? My throat tightened. A little. Did you find anything in it? I shook my head too quickly. No. His eyes lingered on me. He didn't believe me. Strange, he murmured, setting the bag down. The police inventory said there was something in the pocket, but it wasn't documented. My pulse spiked. Maybe they were wrong. Maybe, he said softly. Then he added, I'd hate for you to keep anything that could confuse your recovery. He smiled again, the kind of smile that said, I know more than you think I do. Then he turned and left, closing the door quietly behind him. The second he was gone, I exhaled shakily and pulled the note back out. I memorized the number and burned the paper over the small metal waste bin using a lighter I'd stolen from the supply closet. The smoke curled up, acrid and sharp, but it was the only evidence I could destroy. I needed to know who that voice belonged to. That night, I waited until the corridors were dark again and used the payphone near the staff lounge one I'd noticed during my brief walks. This time, I dialed the number using a prepaid card left unattended on the counter. After 3 rings, someone picked up. It's you, the voice whispered. Thank God. Who are you? I demanded. You don't remember me, the voice said, sadness creeping in. But I worked for Benedict. I helped him gather evidence on Marland Industries. You were part of it, Lydia. You both were. My breath caught. I worked with him? Yes. You were his researcher. You found out about the memory trials, what they were doing to patients, how they were rewriting records to cover up the deaths. Hale was their inside man. I pressed my hand over my mouth. You're saying he's behind all of it? Yes. And he's dangerous. Benedict trusted you because you had something they couldn't erase. What? The voice hesitated. Your memory. Or at least, what's left of it. You recorded something before the crash, a message, a file, something important. Hale's been trying to find it ever since. My mind reeled. Where is it? I don't know, the voice said. But if you still have that jacket, check the inner lining. You hid something there. I looked down, heart pounding. Why are you helping me? Because Benedict wanted you to finish what he started. Before I could ask more, the connection broke, again. I raced back to my room, tore open the lining of the jacket, and felt something thin inside a small plastic memory card taped beneath the fabric. Hands shaking, I pried it out. It was labeled with one word, scrawled in fading ink, truth. For a moment, I just stared at it, the world spinning around me. Then the intercom above my bed crackled to life again, that same distorted voice as before, only this time clearer, colder, unmistakable. You shouldn't have found that, Lydia. And when I looked toward the doorway, I saw Dr. Hale standing there watching me, smiling. In every photo, I looked happy like I knew him well. Dr. Hale stood in the doorway, silhouetted by the harsh hallway light, his expression unreadable. I shoved the small memory card under my pillow before he could notice. Couldn't sleep again? He asked lightly, stepping closer. I was just thinking, I managed to say, my heart pounding. He nodded slowly, his eyes scanning the room as though he could sense the hidden secret beneath the sheets. Thinking is good, but sometimes, Miss Crane, it's better not to think too hard about things we don't remember. Something about his tone made my stomach twist. He smiled faintly, then turned toward the door. Get some rest. You'll need your strength for discharge tomorrow. The word hit me like a punch. Tomorrow? Yes, he said, looking back at me. You're healing well enough to leave. There's no reason to keep you here anymore. He shut the door gently behind him, and I sat there frozen, barely breathing. Just like before when they tried to send me away before I understood anything. I waited until the hallway lights dimmed again, then retrieved the memory card from beneath my pillow. I had no computer, no phone, nothing to read it with, but the hospital's patient lounge had an old desktop used for medical records and family correspondence. If I could reach it without being caught, maybe I could finally see what Benedict had left behind. I slipped out quietly and crept through the corridor, the memory card clutched tight in my hand. The air smelled faintly of antiseptic and metal. Every sound, every distant footstep made my pulse quicken. When I reached the lounge, I closed the door softly behind me and turned on the computer. The monitor flickered, the hum of the system filling the silence. I inserted the card. A folder appeared instantly. Rowen divided by Crane. My fingers trembled as I opened it. Dozens of images loaded on the screen, photos, videos, scanned letters. The first picture stopped my breath cold. It was me, sitting at a restaurant patio beside Benedict Rowen. My hair tied up, eyes bright, laughing. I clicked to the next. Me again. Standing with him in front of a small cabin. Another, taken at what looked like an airport. Another inside an office labeled Marland Industries Research Division. Photo after photo, my face, his face, together. Happy, familiar, I didn't recognize any of it. But whoever that version of me was, she looked like she trusted him completely. The timestamps went back months, some even a year. My mind raced. How could this be? I opened one of the video files. The screen filled with the interior of a car. I was in the passenger seat, recording with my phone, laughing as Benedict teased me about directions. "Don't worry, Professor Rowen," I said in the clip. "I'll make sure you don't get us lost." The sound of my own voice warm, teasing made my chest ache. Then Benedict turned to the camera, smiling. "We're almost there, Lydia. After tonight, everything changes." The video ended abruptly. Everything changes. What had he meant? I clicked another file, a scanned letter, written in Benedict's handwriting. "If you're reading this, Lydia, then it means they've found out. Hale isn't who he says he is. Marland has been using his research to erase people, memories, histories, lives. You and I were next. Keep the card safe. Don't let him find you. The truth is in the photos. Trust yourself, even if you can't trust your mind." I covered my mouth to stop the sob that rose in my throat. The truth was in the photos. Suddenly, everything started to make sense. The memory gaps, the strange familiarity with Hale, the forged documents. They hadn't just injured me, they'd rewritten me. They'd taken pieces of who I was and buried them under fabricated files and false identities. I scrolled through more images, my mind reeling. Then I found one that made my blood run cold. A photo taken in Hale's office, the same one I'd been sitting in days ago. Only this time, Benedict was there too. The two of them were shaking hands, smiling. Behind them, a folder on the desk read, "Trial Subjects Crane L." My stomach lurched. Hale and Benedict had known each other, worked together. The idea that Hale had been pretending otherwise made bile rise in my throat. Another image showed me sitting across from both of them. My eyes were hollow, dazed. Electrodes dotted my temples. Hale was adjusting a monitor beside me. The photo's caption read, "Memory Calibration, Phase 3, Subject Aware." I slammed the keyboard with my hand, closing the file before I could see more. My chest tightened, my breathing shallow. That was why he'd looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. I wasn't supposed to remember. Footsteps echoed outside the lounge. I froze. The door handle turned. Panicking, I yanked the memory card from the computer and stuffed it in my pocket. The screen still glowed faintly with one of the photos open, my face smiling beside Benedict's. Dr. Hale stepped into the room. "Couldn't sleep again?" he asked softly. His tone exactly the same as before. Calm. Measured. I stood frozen. The blood roaring in my ears. "I needed water." He glanced at the glowing monitor. "That doesn't look like water." I didn't answer. He walked closer, his footsteps slow, deliberate. "You've been very curious lately, Lydia. I warned you curiosity could be dangerous." I swallowed hard. "What are you going to do, erase me again?" He smiled faintly. "You remember more than I expected. That's unfortunate." I saw the files, I said, backing toward the corner. You and Benedict. The trials. You used me. Used you? He repeated, tilting his head. No. I saved you. From what? From yourself, he said simply. From the things you couldn't handle remembering. Benedict wanted to expose Marland, but he didn't understand what that meant. You did. That's why you helped me. My throat tightened. You're lying. He stepped closer until I could feel his breath. Am I? Look at those photos again. You weren't his victim, Lydia. You were his partner. I shook my head violently. No, you manipulated me. He sighed, his tone suddenly cold. Believe whatever helps you sleep. It won't matter soon. He reached toward the power switch on the wall. I realized what he was doing a second too late, cutting the electricity. The room went black. I darted past him, heart hammering, and fled down the corridor, clutching the memory card in my hand. Alarms didn't go off, no one stopped me. It was as if the hospital itself wanted me gone. I hid in a supply closet until the early hours of morning, every sound amplified in the dark. When dawn finally broke, I slipped out of the building through an emergency exit and ran until my lungs burned. Outside, the cold air hit me like a slap. I kept going until I reached a gas station miles away. Inside, I used the clerk's computer to open the last remaining file on the card, one marked Final Footage. The video opened to a shaky camera view of Benedict sitting in a car, rain pouring down outside. He looked directly into the lens. If they're watching this, they've already taken Lydia. Hale can't be trusted. The company owns him. But I have proof we hid it somewhere she'd never forget. Somewhere safe. He leaned forward, voice trembling. Lydia, if you see this, follow your own handwriting. You left yourself a trail. The video ended. I stared at the screen in disbelief, my heart racing. Follow my handwriting. I opened the glove compartment of the jacket. I was still wearing the same one from the night of the crash and found faint ink marks along the lining. Arrows drawn in my own script pointing downward. I tore open the seam completely, and inside was a second memory card. This one was labeled Marland Truth Backup. And before I could react, the gas station's lights flickered, and Dr. Hale's reflection appeared in the window behind me. He'd followed me. Standing there, I felt the wind carry whispers of the night I lost everything. I ran until my legs gave out. The road beneath me blurred through tears and exhaustion, and the cold morning air bit at my lungs. Behind me, the gas station grew smaller and smaller. But I couldn't stop. Not while I could still feel his eyes on me. Dr. Hale had followed me. Somehow, he'd found me again. By the time I reached the next town, the sun was already high. I ducked into a diner, shaking and breathless, and ordered a coffee I didn't drink. I sat near the back, hidden by a cracked leather booth, watching the door every few seconds. I had the two memory cards in my pocket now, one labeled Truth, the other Marland Truth Backup. Each one felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I knew what I had to do. If I wanted real answers, I had to go back to where it all began, the crash site. Every instinct screamed not to. The memory of that rain-soaked road haunted my dreams. But somewhere out there, I'd left a version of myself, one who'd known exactly what was happening. I needed to meet her again, even if it meant walking straight into danger. After borrowing a stranger's phone at the diner, I used the Maps app to locate Route 9, the stretch of highway where the reports said Benedict's car had gone off the road. It took me 3 hours to get there by hitching rides from 2 different truck drivers. Neither asked many questions. Maybe they sensed I was running from something I couldn't name. By late afternoon, the weather turned. The sky darkened with low, heavy clouds. The rain started again. Faint at first, then steady, just like that night. When I finally saw the crash site, my knees went weak. The guardrail was still bent inward where the car had broken through. Tire marks scarred the pavement, black and jagged. Beyond that, a steep drop led into the woods where twisted pieces of metal still gleamed through the undergrowth. I climbed down the muddy embankment, careful not to slip. The air smelled of wet pine and rust. My shoes sank into the soft earth as I made my way toward the wreckage. Half hidden among the vines lay what was left of Benedict's sedan, the metal frame crumpled, glass shattered, the license plate barely hanging on. I reached out and brushed my fingers across the scorched hood. The rain washed away the dirt, revealing faint streaks of something dark-dried blood, maybe. Images hit me all at once. Headlights, screaming, a flash of Hale's face in the back seat, then impact. I staggered backward, gasping. My vision blurred with tears. I pulled out my phone, the one I'd borrowed from the gas station clerk, and turned on the flashlight. I began searching through the wreck, feeling for anything that might have survived the fire and rain. Most of it was unrecognizable. Melted plastic, torn fabric, rusted fragments of what used to be a life. But near the driver's seat, half buried in mud, something metallic glinted. I reached for it. It was a voice recorder. Small, black, dented, but miraculously intact. My hands trembled as I pressed the power button. A red light flickered weakly to life. There was only one audio file saved. I hit play. Static filled the air, then Benedict's voice broke through, ragged, panicked, desperate. "Lydia," they found out. "The files aren't safe." Hale's a loud crash interrupted him. A second male voice shouted, muffled by the wind. "Make it look accidental." Then the sound of screeching tires, a woman screaming my voice, and finally, silence. My breath caught. My stomach twisted violently. That second voice, I knew it. It was Dr. Hale's. He hadn't just known about the crash. He'd been there. He'd caused it. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. The world tilted around me. The truth was finally undeniable. I had been running from the man who tried to kill me. I wanted to scream, but my voice refused to come out. The rain grew heavier, soaking through my clothes. I could barely see as I climbed back up toward the road. My mind raced with everything I needed to do. Next, turn the recorder over to the police, upload the files online, find a safe place to hide. But when I reached the road, a car's headlights blinded me. A black SUV idled at the edge of the bend, engine running. My heart stopped. The driver's side window rolled down slowly, and through the rain, I saw him. Dr. Hale. Calm, dry, immaculate, as if the storm didn't exist. "Lydia," he called out, his voice carrying easily through the rain. "Get in. You're going to catch a cold out here." I took a step back. "Stay away from me," he sighed. Almost sadly. "You don't understand, do you? Everything I did, it was to protect you." "Protect me?" I shouted. "You tried to kill me." He tilted his head. "I saved you. Benedict was going to ruin everything. You were part of something bigger, something extraordinary, but he couldn't see it." The SUV door opened. He stepped out slowly, holding an umbrella, his movements deliberate and controlled. "You don't remember the truth, Lydia. Not all of it. You were the one who volunteered for the program." I shook my head violently. "You're lying." He took another step closer. "You begged me to take your memories away. You wanted to forget him, forget what you did. What I did?" He smiled faintly. "Benedict wasn't innocent." The wind whipped rain across my face. "You expect me to believe that?" "I don't expect anything," he said softly. "But you recorded the proof yourself. Check the rest of the files." For a moment, his voice almost sounded sincere, like the doctor who had comforted me days ago. But then I remembered Clara's terrified face. The erased files, the fake documents, the blood on the wreckage. I stepped back another pace. "I don't need to check anything. I know what you are." He sighed, his tone cold now. "Then you leave me no choice." Before I could react, headlights appeared from behind him, another car approaching fast. He turned his head slightly, distracted by the light. I took my chance. I ran. I darted down the embankment, branches whipping against my face. I didn't stop until the sound of his voice disappeared into the storm. When I finally collapsed beside a tree, soaked and shivering, I clutched the recorder to my chest. The rain drowned out everything, even my sobs. I had proof now. Proof of what he'd done. Proof of what they'd both been hiding. But Hale was right about one thing: there was more to the story. Something Benedict had been trying to tell me before the crash. I took out the second memory card, the one labeled Marland Truth Backup. If Benedict had hidden something on it, it might reveal what Hale meant when he said I wasn't innocent. I wiped the mud from the card and slipped it into my pocket. The last thing I saw before I passed out from exhaustion was the faint, blue flash of headlights sweeping the forest road again. When I woke, the recorder was gone. The only thing left beside me in the dirt was a folded piece of paper, written in Hale's precise handwriting. "You were in on it too." And that was when I realized the truth might destroy me just as completely as it destroyed him. He looked shocked when I told him I'd been to the crash site. By the time I made it back to the city, I was filthy, exhausted and terrified, but more than anything, I was angry. I'd spent days being manipulated, lied to, and nearly killed. Now I finally had pieces of the truth, and I wasn't running anymore. I rented a room in a cheap motel off the highway and locked myself inside. The first thing I did was check my pockets again. Both memory cards were still there. The one marked TRUF and the one labeled Marland Truth Backup. The recorder was gone, yes. But those cards held more than just memories. They were evidence. I turned on the TV, half expecting to see Hale's face plastered across the news. Nothing. It was as if the man didn't exist. No mention of him. No mention of Benedict Rowen's crash. No sign that anyone, anywhere, cared that a doctor was experimenting on human minds. But that was about to change. I needed to confront him. Not through fear this time, but through control. Before I left the motel, I connected the tooth memory card to the old laptop sitting on the nightstand. The screen filled with file names, hundreds of them. Patient IDs, experiment codes, logs. I opened the most recent file, Subject 6 C. Rowen B. The entry read, "Memory compartmentalization complete. Subject exhibits temporary disorientation. Partner. Subject 7. C. Crane. L. To undergo same procedure in 24 hours. Consent form acquired." My stomach twisted. Consent form. I never signed one, not consciously. I scrolled further down the document and froze when I saw the next line. Procedure authorized by R. Hale, overseen by Marland Industries Executive A. Whitmore. Objective: remove recollection of Project Phoenix and its funding trail. I felt sick. Remove recollection. They hadn't just experimented on us. They'd erased memories to cover their crimes. I pulled the second card from my pocket, the one marked Marland Truth Backup. My hands shook as I inserted it. This one contained videos, security footage, timestamps, reports. The first clip was dated 3 months before the crash. The camera panned across a sterile lab. Hale stood beside Benedict, both of them wearing lab coats. "Hale, if we can control selective memory suppression, Marland will fund the entire next phase." "Benedict, it's unethical. You're talking about removing identity itself." "Hale, identity is a construct. The company isn't destroying people, it's rewriting them." I shut the laptop quickly, bile rising in my throat. Now I understood. Benedict had discovered what Hale and Marland were doing and tried to expose them. I'd been helping him. That was why we were on the road that night, why we were attacked. And now Hale was trying to convince me I'd been part of his side. That ended today. I used the motel's landline to call the hospital. When the front desk answered, I said calmly, "Tell Dr. Rowen Hale that Lydia Crane is alive. Tell him I want to meet." There was silence, then a nervous laugh. I'm sorry, ma'am. Dr. Hale isn't here anymore." "Where is he?" "I can't disclose that information." "Then tell him this," I said. "I know about Project Phoenix." I hung up before they could respond. Less than an hour later, a black car pulled into the parking lot. I was waiting. Hale stepped out, immaculate as always pressed shirt. perfect composure. But this time, his calm felt brittle. His eyes were sharper, colder. "You shouldn't have called," he said. "You shouldn't have killed Benedict," I replied. He studied me for a long moment, then smiled thinly. "You've been busy." "I went back to the crash site," I said. "Found the recorder." A flicker of panic crossed his face so brief, most people would have missed it. "That's impossible." "Oh, it's very possible," I said. "I heard you, Hale. Your voice, giving the order to make it look accidental." He stepped closer, lowering his tone. "You don't understand what you heard." "No, I understand perfectly. You killed him to protect Marland Industries. You tried to erase me because I was the last loose end." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "You think this is that simple? That I was the villain and Benedict the hero? You're not twisting this," I snapped. "I saw the lab footage, the trials, the signatures. You destroyed lives." His jaw clenched. "I saved them. By turning people into blank slates?" He shook his head slowly. "Benedict's research was flawed. His method caused psychotic breaks. He wanted to expose Marland, yes, but his plan would have doomed hundreds. I intervened to contain the fallout." I stared at him. "You're saying you were the hero?" "I'm saying I did what had to be done." He stepped closer again, his voice almost pleading now. "You think you remember everything, Lydia, but you don't. You asked me to remove your memories. You couldn't handle what Benedict was doing." "I don't believe you," I whispered. "Then ask yourself this: why did he leave you as the beneficiary? Why would a man trying to expose me also make you the owner of everything he had? Unless he felt guilty. Unless you were complicit." His words cut deep, even though I didn't want them to. "You're lying," he shrugged. "Maybe. But you have the files. Read them all if you dare." He turned to leave, but I blocked his path. "No, you're not walking away this time." I reached into my pocket and held up the memory cards. "These are going public. Everything Project Phoenix, Marland, your role in Benedict's death." Hale's expression changed. For the first time since I'd met him, he looked afraid. "You don't understand," he said. "You'll destroy yourself too." "What are you talking about?" He sighed, the mask cracking. "You think you were his victim. But the files, those videos they show you sitting beside me during the early trials. You weren't forced into this, Lydia. You volunteered. You believed in it." My stomach dropped. "No. You were brilliant," he continued softly. "You and Benedict designed the neural mapping algorithm together. Marland funded it, yes, but you were the one who perfected the memory erasure model. You didn't just know about Project Phoenix. You created it." I stumbled backward, shaking my head. "You're lying." He took one last step closer, his voice low and certain. "You wiped your own memories to forget what you'd done. Benedict wanted to expose Marland, but you wanted to disappear. That's why you came to me. That's why I saved you." I couldn't breathe. My hands trembled as I stared at the memory cards. Could it be true? Was I the reason all of this had started? I forced myself to speak. "If I did this, if I created that program, then why kill Benedict?" "Because he betrayed you," Hale said. "He was going to leak your research without telling you. You were in the car that night to stop him. You argued. He lost control of the wheel. I arrived minutes later, but you were already unconscious. The rest." He spread his hands. I cleaned up. Tears blurred my vision. "You're lying," I whispered again. But this time my voice faltered. "Am I?" he asked gently. "You have the files. Watch them. You'll see yourself in the lab. You'll hear your own voice approving the trials." He stepped closer, almost kindly now. "Let me help you remember, Lydia. One last time." I backed away, clutching the cards like a lifeline. "No, I'll find my own truth." He smiled sadly. "Be careful. The truth isn't always something you can survive." He turned and walked away into the rain, leaving me shaking in the motel doorway. I sank to the floor, staring at the memory cards. Every part of me wanted to destroy them, to never know if he was telling the truth. But I couldn't live in ignorance anymore. I inserted one into the laptop and pressed play. The video opened on a laboratory. I stood beside Benedict and Hale, all of us wearing white coats. My voice echoed through the speakers, calm and steady. Trial complete. Subject response nominal. Memory partition confirmed. Then Benedict's voice. Congratulations, Lydia. You did it. The video ended. I sat frozen, unable to move, unable to breathe. If Hale was telling the truth, then I wasn't a victim. I was the architect. And as that realization sank in, the motel lights flickered and a message appeared on my laptop screen. Transfer in progress, all files to Marland Industries server. Someone was remotely wiping everything. And that meant Hale wasn't working alone. He wasn't there to rob me, he was there to warn me. When I left the motel that night, I didn't have a plan. I didn't even have a destination, only fear, confusion, and the gnawing thought that maybe, just maybe, Dr. Hale was right about me. The images from the video replayed in my mind over and over, me in a lab coat, instructing others, speaking with calm authority about erasing someone's memories. The tone in my voice was confident, too confident. That wasn't the Lydia I knew now, the one who trembled at every sound and hid from her own reflection. If I really had created that program, what else had I done? The rain had stopped by the time I reached my apartment building. The sight of it brought an ache to my chest, the cracked paint on the stairwell, the dim light flickering in the hallway. It should have felt like home. But it didn't. The lock on my door looked untouched. But as I stepped inside, something felt off. Too quiet. Too still. I flicked on the light, nothing happened. My stomach dropped. "Hello?" I whispered. That was when I heard it, the faint creak of a floorboard behind me. Before I could turn, a hand clamped over my mouth. I thrashed, elbowing backward, but the grip held firm. Then a low voice whispered near my ear, "Lydia, stop. I'm not here to hurt you." I froze. The man slowly released me and stepped back, raising his hands to show he was unarmed. He looked exhausted, unshaven, rain-soaked, his clothes wrinkled from travel. His eyes, though, were sharp and steady. "My name is Evan Rowen," he said. The name hit me like a jolt. Rowen? As in, yes, Benedict's brother. My pulse thundered in my ears. "What do you want from me? I want to keep you alive." He took a step forward, and for a moment, I thought he might lunge. But instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small flash drive, setting it carefully on my table. "That's what Hale was looking for," he said. "The original Phoenix files. Benedict made me promise to find you if anything happened to him." I stared at the flash drive, my mind spinning. "Why would he trust me?" Hale said. "Hale lies," Evan interrupted. "He's been lying from the start. Marland Industries used both of you. They made you believe you were creating something revolutionary, memory therapy, trauma healing, but it was always about control. Benedict found out too late. My throat felt tight. Then why erase my memory?" "Because you knew everything," Evan said quietly, "and they couldn't risk you remembering." He looked around the apartment, tension in every movement. "We don't have much time. Hale's not the only one after you now." I felt a chill. "What do you mean?" "Marland's gone into lockdown. The board knows the files exist. They've sent their own people to clean up what Hale couldn't." I shook my head. "Clean up?" He met my eyes. "To make sure no one ever finds out." I sank onto the couch, my mind racing. "Then why give me this? Why not take it and run?" "Because Benedict wanted you to finish what he started. The files on that drive, they're encrypted. Only your biometric key can unlock them." "My what?" Evan pulled out a small tablet and turned it on. The screen displayed a digital vault icon that pulsed faintly. "He coded it to your retinal signature," he explained. "He said you'd know what to do once you saw what's inside." "I don't even remember who I am," I said bitterly. "What makes you think I can handle whatever's on there?" because you're the only one who ever stood up to them. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that the version of me in those lab videos had been fighting for something good, not building a weapon for a corporation. But before I could say anything else, a sharp knock rattled the door. Evan's head snapped up. "You expecting anyone?" "No," I whispered. He moved quickly, crossing the room to the window. "Back exit?" "There's a fire escape," I said. He motioned for me to go first. "Take the drive, don't stop. What about you? I'll buy you time." Another knock, louder this time. Then a man's voice. "Miss Crane. Open up. Federal investigators. We need to ask you a few questions about Dr. Hale." Evan looked at me, his expression grim. "They're not investigators." He pushed me toward the window. I hesitated for a second, then climbed through, clutching the flash drive. The cold night air hit me like a slap. "Go!" he hissed. As I reached the next landing, I heard the door crash open below. Shouting, boots pounding on the floor. "Evan Rowen," a voice barked. "Hands where we can see them." Then a gunshot. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. Another shot followed, then silence. Tears stung my eyes as I forced myself to keep moving, down the fire escape, through the alley, into the shadows. I didn't look back. When I finally stopped, I was in an abandoned parking lot several blocks away. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the flash drive onto the pavement. I crouched to pick it up, and that's when I noticed something else on the ground, a wallet. Evan's. He must have dropped it when he was taken. Inside was his driver's license and a folded photo of him and Benedict, smiling together. On the back, in faded ink, were the words, "Find Lydia. Tell her the key phrase, the Lighthouse Protocol." I whispered the phrase out loud, tasting the words. The Lighthouse Protocol. It felt familiar, like a spark in my brain trying to reignite. I found a bus terminal nearby and used a self-serve kiosk to buy a one-way ticket out of town. As I sat on the bench, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop again. The encrypted vault appeared, blinking steadily. At the bottom of the screen was a prompt, "Enter access phrase." My heart raced. I typed, "The Lighthouse Protocol." The vault unlocked instantly. A flood of documents filled the screen, internal emails, research notes, payment records. The truth spilled out line by line. Marland Industries had been funding a covert program to erase the memories of whistleblowers, witnesses, and even government employees who posed a threat to their influence. Benedict had discovered it, and I had built the technology that made it possible. There were files labeled with names, photos of people I didn't recognize, all marked, wiped. Then I saw my own name. Crane. Lydia, memory reset complete. Subject relocated to Street Clare Memorial under Hale's supervision. My stomach turned. I scrolled further down and found an attached note from Hale himself. "Crane remains the only one capable of decrypting the pursed master data. Maintain control until retrieval." My entire body went cold. He hadn't just been protecting me, he'd been keeping me, ensuring I couldn't remember until it was too late. I looked up at the empty bus terminal around me, realizing I was completely alone. The people hunting me had already erased countless others. They could do it again to me, to anyone who got in their way. I closed the laptop and clutched the flash drive tightly. There was no going back now. I didn't know if Evan was alive or dead. But I knew one thing for certain. If Marland wanted to keep their secrets buried, I'd dig them up myself. The lights in the terminal flickered once, twice, then went out completely. In the reflection of the darkened window beside me, a faint red light blinked. A camera lens. And behind it, a familiar voice spoke from the overhead speaker, low, calm, and unmistakable. "You can't run from what you built, Lydia. You are Project Phoenix." That was when I knew Dr. Hale hadn't lost me at all. He'd just let me think I was free. The flash drive contained everything: emails, bank transfers, photos, proof of every life they'd rewritten. The moment I heard Hale's voice echo through the dark terminal, instinct took over. I grabbed my bag, snatched the laptop, and ran. My boots hit the tile floor in sharp, panicked rhythm as his calm tone followed me through the speakers. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Lydia. You can still come back. His voice reverberated off the walls, close enough to make my skin crawl. I didn't answer. I bolted out the emergency exit and into the night, sprinting down the empty street until the terminal lights were nothing but faint orange dots behind me. I ducked into an alley and pressed myself against the cold brick, gasping for breath. My hands shook as I powered up the laptop again. The flash drive's files were still open, rows upon rows of documents, untouched. I clicked through them, my fingers trembling. There were records of every subject Marland Industries had manipulated. Political donors, journalists, whistleblowers, even scientists. Dozens of them had been erased and rewritten under the Project Phoenix umbrella. Each file included notes from Hale and others. Memory override successful. Subject identity reassigned. Witness containment complete. And beside each entry, a payment trail. Millions of dollars funneled into offshore accounts under shell companies. Each transaction traced back to Marland Industries' leadership. I scrolled faster, my stomach churning. This wasn't just corruption, it was systematic control. They hadn't been curing trauma or helping people heal. They'd been weaponizing memory, and I'd helped them build it. Tears stung my eyes as I opened the final document in the chain. It was labeled Phoenix Protocol Deactivation Key. My name was listed at the top. Authorization required, L. Crane. Whatever this key was, I was the only person who could activate it or destroy it. I copied the entire folder onto a secure drive, then encrypted it with a new password only I knew. I had no idea who to trust anymore, but I knew I couldn't keep running forever. Someone out there had to help me expose them. I needed the media, real journalists. When the first faint light of morning broke over the skyline, I made my way to a small public library downtown. My hair was soaked, my clothes wrinkled, and my nerves frayed, but the librarian didn't ask questions when I asked to use a private terminal. The computer hummed to life. I opened a blank email and began typing. To NASA Investigations at truthsource.org. Subject, urgent, whistleblower evidence. Marland Industries. I have proof of a program called Project Phoenix Illegal Memory Suppression funded by Marland Industries. Attached are files showing financial transactions, patient records, and videos, confirming Dr. Rowen Hale's involvement. I don't know how long I have before they find me. Please keep this anonymous until you verify. L.C. I attached the encrypted folder, typed the password in a separate message to follow only upon confirmation, and hit send. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to relief. But it didn't last. I noticed movement through the library window, a black sedan idling across the street. Tinted windows. No plates. They'd found me again. I slammed the laptop shut and darted toward the back exit. The librarian looked up, startled, but I didn't stop to explain. Outside, the wind whipped my hair as I sprinted through side streets until the sedan's engine noise faded behind me. I ducked into a convenience store and hid in the bathroom stall, heart hammering. I could still feel Hale's presence like a shadow I couldn't shake. He wasn't just hunting me out of revenge. He needed me alive for whatever the deactivation key was. After 20 minutes, I forced myself to keep moving. I headed toward the riverfront, blending into the sparse crowd of early commuters. That's when my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. This is Truth Source. We received your files. They're real. Meet us tonight, Pier 19, 10 p.m. Don't come alone. I read it twice, unsure if I could trust it. But it was my only lead. All day, I stayed on the move. Cafes, bus stops, hotel lobbies, never more than 10 minutes in one place. I kept catching reflections of a man in a gray coat in every window I passed. I didn't have to see his face to know who it was. When darkness fell, I made my way to the pier. The water shimmered under the moonlight, and the wind cut cold through my jacket. The pier was mostly empty except for two figures standing by a lamppost, a man and a woman. The woman stepped forward first, hands raised in reassurance. Lydia Crane? I hesitated. Who are you? My name's Elena Torres, she said. Investigative journalist. You sent us the files. The man behind her nodded. We verified the bank data. You're telling the truth. This could destroy Marland Industries. I exhaled shakily. Then you have to publish it. Now. Elena's expression was grim. But there's something you need to understand. Hale isn't just some rogue scientist. He's protected. Half the people funding Marland are in positions of power. The moment this story breaks, you'll have a target on your back. I already do, I said. She nodded. Then let's make it worth it. We moved to her car, where she connected a laptop to upload the encrypted drive. We'll back this up on multiple servers, she said. Even if they shut us down, it'll leak everywhere. As the progress bar filled, I glanced toward the water. The waves lapped gently against the pier. For the first time, I felt the weight of what was about to happen. Dozens of lives had been rewritten, stolen. If this worked, they'd finally get them back. Then the screen froze. The progress bar stopped at 87%. Why did it? I started, but Elena's face went pale. Her partner swore under his breath. It's them. They traced the upload. Before I could react, headlights flared behind us. A black SUV screeched to a stop. Elena grabbed my arm. Run! I bolted, clutching the laptop as men in suits poured out of the vehicle. Shouts echoed through the night. One grabbed my shoulder, but I swung the laptop bag hard, breaking free. I sprinted down the pier, the sound of boots pounding behind me. Elena shouted something, but it was drowned by the blare of sirens. Red and blue lights flashed from the street, real police this time. The agents froze, caught off guard. The reporters must have called for backup. In the chaos, I ducked behind a cargo container, gasping for air. I pulled out the flash drive, the only copy I still had, and stared at it. Under the moonlight, this tiny piece of metal held everything. Proof of corruption, manipulation, murder. The evidence that could destroy them. Sirens grew louder, agents shouted. A gunshot rang out, and Elena screamed. I peeked out from behind the container. One of the suited men was dragging her partner toward the SUV while another raised his weapon. Adrenaline surged. I had two choices: run and survive, or fight and expose everything. I shoved the flash drive deep into the lining of my boot, zipped up my jacket, and ran toward the chaos. The agents turned just as I shouted, "You want it? Come and get it!" They lunged toward me, but I ducked under the pier and sprinted through the maze of support beams, splashing through the rising tide. Above me, voices barked orders. Below, the water lapped around my ankles. I reached the other side of the dock and climbed up, soaked but alive. The pier behind me was swarming with sirens and chaos. I didn't look back. As I disappeared into the dark streets beyond the harbor, I whispered to myself, "You wanted to rewrite memories, Hale? Let's see how you handle the truth." But when I glanced at my reflection in a storefront window, I froze. Someone had spray-painted a symbol beside the glass, the same Phoenix logo from the lab files. Beneath it were 3 words in fresh red paint. "You're not done." And that was when I realized the evidence hadn't just exposed them, it had awakened something far worse. I hit upload before I could talk myself out of it. The flash drive burned like fire in my hand as I sprinted through the fog-soaked streets. My heart pounded in rhythm with my footsteps, each beat screaming one thing: finish this. Marland Industries had built an empire on buried truths, erased memories, and stolen lives. Now I had their empire's spine sitting in my pocket. By the time I reached a safe house, Elena had arranged a tiny studio above an old bakery downtown. The sun was already bleeding over the skyline. I locked every bolt, drew the curtains, and collapsed at the small wooden desk in the corner. The laptop I'd salvaged from the pier flickered to life. I plugged in the flash drive. Folders, encrypted files, photos, bank records, all the evidence I'd risked everything for. My reflection stared back at me from the dark screen, gaunt and sleepless. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel fear. I felt purpose. But before I could hit upload, doubt crept in. What if Hale was right? What if there was more to the story? What if I had been complicit? I closed my eyes and forced myself to remember. Benedict's laughter. The argument in the car. The crash. The blood. Hale's voice. My own guilt. No. I wasn't the villain here. I might have built the weapon, but they were the ones who turned it against people, and I was going to stop them. I opened the encrypted archive and began recording a video. My hands shook as the red light blinked to life. My name is Lydia Crane, I began, voice steady but trembling underneath. I was part of Project Phoenix. What started as medical research became a machine for control. They erased people's memories to hide their crimes, to silence whistleblowers, to rewrite truth itself. I built this technology, but I didn't understand what they'd do with it. Now I do. I looked straight into the camera, my reflection burning into the screen. They can change memories, but they can't erase proof. I have it. I have everything. And I'm sharing it with the world. I clicked stop, attached the video to the archive, and hovered over the final button, upload all. And then I pressed it. The progress bar began to move. 10%. 40. 70. 95. My heart was a drum. When it reached 100, the message popped up. Upload successful. Files publicly distributed to global news networks. I exhaled a long, shaky breath. It was done. But seconds later, the laptop screen flashed. Static. Then a new window opened automatically, a live broadcast feed. It showed news anchors talking rapidly, headlines flooding across the bottom of the screen. Marland Industries accused of human rights violations. Project Phoenix files leaked dozens of officials implicated. Dr. Rowen Hale named in illegal memory experiments. I covered my mouth. It was working. The story was out. Images of Benedict Rowen appeared on the screen, his face, his company profile, his obituary. Then photos of Hale, Marland executives, even government partners flashed one after another. The world was finally seeing what we'd all died for. But amid the relief, one headline froze me cold. Unconfirmed, Marland employee Lydia Crane missing, considered person of interest. Person of interest, not hero, not survivor. I'd expected that. But seeing it printed made me realize something terrifying. I hadn't destroyed Marland yet. I'd only started the war. Within hours, the news spread everywhere: TV, radio, social media, podcasts. Millions watched my confession video. People demanded answers. Lawsuits erupted. Marland's stock crashed. Protests began outside their headquarters. But behind the chaos, there was silence from one man, Dr. Rowen Hale. No press appearances, no statements, no arrest record. Nothing. It was as if he'd vanished into thin air. That silence scared me more than anything else. By evening, I was hiding in the bakery's basement, my nerves raw. The world might finally know the truth, but I knew better than to think Marland would let me live freely after this. I'd just destroyed an empire. Empires don't die quietly. Around midnight, a faint knock came at the back door. I froze. 3 slow knocks. A pause. 2 more. I reached for the small kitchen knife on the counter and whispered, "Who is it?" A voice answered softly, "It's Evan." I yanked the door open, and there he was, alive, limping, bruised, pale, but alive. "Oh my God," I breathed. "I thought they missed," he said with a grim smile. "They think I'm dead." I pulled him inside and locked the door. "The broadcast, did you see it?" He nodded weakly, lowering himself onto a chair. "It's everywhere. You did it. Marland's finished." "I hope so," I said. "But Hale's still out there." Evan's face darkened. "He won't stay hidden for long. He'll need to protect what's left of the program." "What's left?" Evan hesitated. "You destroyed the main files, yes, but Project Phoenix wasn't just about erasing memories, it was about rebuilding them. Hale had a secondary objective: implanting new ones." My stomach dropped. "Implanting?" He nodded. "He wanted to reprogram entire identities. Marland called it Phase 2. And he already started the trials." I gripped the table. "You're telling me he can rewrite who people are?" Evan looked me straight in the eye. "He already did." The words hung in the air like smoke. He pulled a folded document from his jacket and slid it across the table. This is from one of Benedict's old hard drives. It's an internal memo from Hale. I unfolded it. The title at the top read, PHASE, 2. Memory Reconstruction, Crane. L primary test case. I felt the blood drain from my face. You were the first, Evan said quietly. That's why he's obsessed with you. You weren't just a scientist or a patient, you were proof the procedure worked. I could barely breathe. That's impossible. He shook his head. You said in your confession that you didn't remember creating Phoenix, right? That's because you didn't. Hale rewrote your memories to make you believe you built it. You didn't erase anyone's mind, Lydia. He erased yours. Tears blurred my vision. So I've been fighting the wrong version of myself this entire time. You were never his accomplice, he said softly. You were his masterpiece. I covered my mouth, trembling. Everything I'd believed about myself, my guilt, my part in the experiment, it had all been his design. Evan's eyes hardened. He'll come for you now. You're the living proof of Phoenix's success. I wiped my tears and stood. Then we end it for good. How? We find what's left of his lab. We destroy everything. Evan nodded slowly. There's one problem, he said, pulling out a folded map. His facility isn't in the city. It's underground beneath Marlin's main headquarters. A tremor of fear ran through me. How do we get in? He smiled grimly. I still have my brother's clearance codes. The plan formed in silence. If we could reach the core servers, we could wipe every trace of Project Phoenix from existence. I packed up the remaining drives, loaded them into my backpack, and looked once more at the glowing headlines on the screen. Marland was crumbling, but Hale was waiting. As dawn broke, Evan and I slipped out through the bakery's back alley and into the rising light. Somewhere behind us, sirens echoed and reporters shouted into cameras. The world thought the story was over. But I knew better. Because when the screen in the bakery window flickered to a breaking news alert, I caught a final horrifying headline before it disappeared. Dr. Rowen Hale found dead in apparent suicide, body unidentified. Evan saw it too, his jaw clenched. He's not dead. No, I whispered, watching the image of Hale's smiling face fade from the screen. He's rewriting the ending. And this time, he wasn't rewriting someone else's memory, he was rewriting mine. The truth hit me like the crash all over again. We drove through the night without speaking. The city disappeared behind us, replaced by a long stretch of empty highway and the faint glow of dawn bleeding over the horizon. Evan sat beside me, his jaw tight, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Every mile took us closer to the place where it had all begun, and hopefully, where it would all end. Marlin's headquarters loomed in the distance by mid-morning. From the outside, it looked like any other corporate tower, glass, steel, and cold perfection. But beneath it, buried under layers of concrete and secrecy, lay the core of Project Phoenix. Hale's lab, the same place where he'd rewritten me. We parked in an alley a few blocks away and waited for the morning shift to start. Evan pulled a folded blueprint from his jacket. The underground facility has its own power grid, he said. We'll have to access it through the loading bay elevator. That's where the clearance codes come in. I nodded, slipping the flash drive into my jacket pocket. Once we're inside, I'll find the core servers and trigger the deactivation key. The files said only my authorization can do it. Evan looked at me carefully. If we do this, Lydia, there's no turning back. You could lose what's left of your memory, maybe worse. I forced a small smile. After everything Hale did, losing my memories might be mercy. We entered through a side entrance marked for maintenance staff. Evan's stolen badge got us through the first few checkpoints. My heart hammered with every step. Cameras watched us from every corner, but no alarms sounded. It felt too easy. When we reached the service elevator, Evan keyed in a code. The doors slid open with a mechanical hiss. As the elevator descended, the air grew colder. My reflection in the mirrored wall looked almost ghost-like, hair disheveled, eyes hollow. For the first time, I truly saw what Hale had turned me into. A woman half made of fear, half made of fire. The doors opened to a corridor lined with flickering lights. The walls gleamed white, sterile, like the inside of a morgue. We walked quietly, our footsteps echoing. Doors on either side bore identification codes. Subject testing, neural reconstruction, long-term storage. It wasn't a lab. It was a graveyard. Then, suddenly, a voice broke through the intercom. Smooth. Familiar. Chilling. "Welcome back, Lydia." I froze. Evan spun toward the ceiling speakers. "Hale." His chuckle filled the hall. "You didn't really think you could erase me, did you? Project Phoenix wasn't about memory suppression, it was about immortality. As long as my mind exists in the system, I'll never die." My blood ran cold. "You uploaded yourself?" "Let's call it an upgrade," he said. "You helped design the framework, remember? Neural mapping. Data preservation. You built the code that made me eternal." I felt dizzy. He was no longer just a man, he was the ghost in the machine. Evan grabbed my arm. "We need to find the core, now." We sprinted down the hallway, turning corners until we reached a reinforced door labeled Main Server Chamber. The keypad beside it flashed red. Evan entered Benedict's clearance code, but the system denied access. From the speakers, Hale's voice purred. "Still trying to use my old tricks? You forget, I know every thought before you do." "You don't know me anymore, Hale." "Oh, Lydia," he said softly. "I know you better than you know yourself." I took a deep breath, then stared at the keypad. My mind felt foggy, but something tugged at me, an image, faint but familiar. Numbers. A pattern I'd seen in the lab videos. I typed 0417. The door clicked open. "How did you?" I remembered, I whispered. We entered the server chamber. Towering columns of machinery surrounded us, humming with an otherworldly energy. At the center of the room stood a glass console pulsing with blue light. On the screen, a digital face flickered to life, Hale's. "You're home," he said. "Not for long," I muttered. I approached the console and pulled out the flash drive. "You built your immortality into Phoenix's code," I said. "But that means if I destroy the program, I destroy you." "Do you really want to do that?" Hale asked calmly. "If you erase me, you erase yourself. You're part of the network too. You were the first integrated subject. My perfect mirror." I faltered. "What are you talking about?" "Benedict never told you?" His voice softened, almost tender. "You weren't just the scientist, Lydia. You were the experiment. Your consciousness was the prototype. That's why your memories were fragmented, your mind was copied, reconstructed, overwritten." Evan stepped forward. "Don't listen to him." But I couldn't move. His words slammed into me like a wave. Images flooded my mind, me strapped to a chair, Hale at the controls, Benedict pleading with him to stop, a blinding light. Then nothing. I gasped, clutching my head. "It's true," I whispered. "I saw it. He uploaded me too. You were dying after the first trial." Hale said gently. "I saved you. You exist because of me." "No," I said, tears burning my eyes. "I exist in spite of you," Evan shouted. "Lydia, the key! Now!" I inserted the flash drive into the console. The system beeped, scanning the data. A prompt appeared. "Confirm deactivation of Project Phoenix. This action is irreversible. Authorized user, Lydia Crane." My hand hovered over the screen. "Think carefully," Hale said. "You erase me. You erase every version of yourself stored in this network. Every memory you ever had before the crash will vanish." For a moment, I hesitated. I could live with the truth. I could live knowing who I used to be. Or I could end it, freeing everyone, including myself, from his manipulation forever. Evan's voice cut through the static. "Lydia, you can't let him live in that system. He'll find a way out." I looked at the digital face on the screen. his cold, knowing eyes staring back at me. "Goodbye, doctor," I whispered. Then I hit confirm. Alarms blared instantly. The room erupted in flashing red lights. Hale's voice fractured into static. "No, Lydia, wait." The servers began to overload, sparks raining from the ceiling. Data streamed across the monitors, collapsing line by line until the screen went black. Evan grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the exit. "It's collapsing, go." We sprinted through the hallways as smoke poured from the vents. Behind us, the facility shuddered. I could hear the whine of failing generators, the groan of steel tearing apart. By the time we reached the elevator, flames licked the corridor walls. Evan jammed the door open and shoved me inside. As the elevator rose, I looked down through the smoke-filled shaft and saw Hale's face one last time flicker across a burning monitor. His final words came through distorted static. "You can't delete yourself, Lydia. Because I'm part of you." Then the line went silent. We burst out into daylight as the ground below us rumbled. The building behind us cracked, trembled, and then collapsed inward, swallowing the last remnants of Project Phoenix. I fell to my knees on the pavement, coughing, shaking, crying but free. For the first time since waking up in that hospital, I was free. Evan knelt beside me. "It's over," he said softly. I nodded, staring at the smoke curling into the sky. "Not over," I said. "But finally real." Days later, as the world dissected the ruins of Marland Industries, I sat by the ocean, Benedict's favorite place, according to Evan, and tried to piece together who I really was. Some memories had returned, others never would, but I'd made peace with that. I didn't need to know everything to start again. I wasn't Lydia Crane, the scientist who built Phoenix. I wasn't Hale's experiment, or Marland's victim. I was just a survivor. And maybe that was enough. Still, on quiet nights, when the waves are calm and the wind shifts, I sometimes hear a whisper in the static of my phone. Soft and distorted, like an echo trapped between worlds. "Hello, Lydia. Miss me?" And that's when I realize the past isn't gone, it's only sleeping, waiting for someone brave or foolish enough to wake it again.